The airport was alive with the sound of rolling suitcases, hurried footsteps, and the endless announcements of delayed flights. Travelers moved in long lines, some tired, some irritated, some simply hoping to get home. But in the middle of all the noise stood a woman who carried herself differently from the rest. She was tall, confident, and her dress was simple yet elegant. Her name was Amara Lewis, the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the world. She had come back from an international meeting that could shape the future of her business. Amara was not just another business traveler. Her mind was sharp, her instincts sharper. She had built her company from nothing but determination, courage, and the ability to see opportunities where others saw only risk. But while she was used to winning boardroom battles, she never expected to be caught in a fight in the middle of an airport terminal. She approached the security line like everyone else, her bag in hand and her phone at her ear. On the other end was her chief financial officer, giving her updates about contracts and figures. Her accent carried across the space, rich and strong, filled with the roots of her family and her homeland. It was the sound of pride, but it was also the sound some small-minded people thought they could mock at first. It was only a few whispers from the staff. A quick laugh, a smirk. Amara ignored it. She was used to people underestimating her. But then came the officer at the checkpoint, a woman in a navy suit, standing with too much authority and too little respect. She scanned Amara's passport, looked at her, and chuckled under her breath. "Speak again," the officer said with a half-smile. "I just love hearing that funny little accent. What are you, lost?" The words were sharp enough to cut through the busy noise of the terminal. Several passengers turned to look. The smirk on the officer's face grew, as if she had already won something. For the first time in a long time, Amara felt a storm rise inside her. She did not raise her voice. She did not shout. She simply stood taller and looked the officer in the eye. "Do your job," she said firmly. "Or step aside." The officer leaned forward, her finger pointing. "You don't tell me what to do. You think your money makes you special? What are you without that fancy company of yours?" "Nothing." The crowd around them grew silent. Phones lifted, cameras ready to capture every moment. Amara could feel the eyes on her. She could also feel her CFO's voice still speaking through the phone. Confused at the silence on her end. In that moment, Amara made a decision. She would not be mocked. She would not be broken down to a joke. She turned slightly, speaking into her phone loud enough for everyone to hear. "Freeze all 950 million. Now." The line went dead quiet. People who had been laughing before now stood frozen. The officer's smirk vanished. Amara was not just a traveler anymore. She was a storm, and she had just reminded everyone of the power she carried. The CFO on the line asked for confirmation, but Amara repeated her command. Her money, her contracts, her entire global chain of business operations, all of it would stop moving in the next hour. Every deal tied to her company would feel the weight of her decision. The officer's face paled. She had thought she was mocking a woman with a passport. She had not realized she was trying to humiliate the very person who held the power to change industries overnight. The security staff looked at each other nervously. The travelers whispered, their cameras recording history in the making. Amara did not break eye contact with the officer. "You insult me," she said calmly. "But you insult more than me. You insult the millions who believe in me, who built this with me. You will see what one insult costs." The air felt heavier. It was no longer just about a checkpoint at the airport. It was the beginning of a war. Not with guns or soldiers, but with contracts, influence, and the unstoppable force of one woman who refused to bow her head. Amara stepped forward, collected her things, and walked past the officer without another word. Her phone was already ringing again with urgent questions. But she had no time for panic. She knew exactly what she was doing. By the time she reached her car outside, The first wave of calls from international partners had already begun. Reporters were on their way to the scene. The story would spread like fire. A single insult had sparked something far greater. And Amara Lewis was ready for the war that was coming. Asterisk. The city skyline glowed against the night sky as Amara's car cut through traffic. She sat in the back seat, her phone buzzing endlessly. Each call carried panic, shock, or disbelief. Her CFO's voice trembled as he explained the chaos she had unleashed. Amara, the freeze has already taken effect. Payments are blocked. Partners are calling. Some are furious. Some are terrified. The stock exchange is asking for answers. Amara listened silently, her eyes focused on the dark road ahead. She was not worried. She had expected this. Every great battle began with confusion. Every victory was born in the middle of noise. She had been mocked in front of strangers, humiliated for nothing more than her accent. And she had chosen not to shout, not to fight with insults. She had chosen the only weapon she trusted, her power. Her driver glanced at her through the mirror. Even he had seen the video. Already it was spreading online. The image of Amara at the checkpoint, phone in hand, eyes sharp, commanding the freeze of $950 million. The internet was alive with her name, but Amara knew the internet was not where wars were won. Real power lived in boardrooms, in contracts, in the quiet places where men in suits thought no one could touch them. She intended to walk into those rooms the next morning and remind them what respect looked like. Her first stop was her headquarters. The building's tall glass walls reflected the city lights like mirrors. Inside, her senior team was already waiting, some anxious, some angry. The CFO stood with a stack of papers. "We've already lost 2 partners tonight. They say they can't risk being tied to us after such a public move. Others are begging for clarity. And the media." He stopped, his voice tight. "The media is calling you reckless." Amara placed her purse on the table and looked around the room. "Reckless?" She repeated calmly. "What do you call mocking a CEO in public? What do you call disrespect that reaches millions online in less than an hour? I will not be small for anyone's comfort. If the world wants to test me, then let them." The room was silent. Her words carried more weight than the numbers in the CFO's hands. One of the younger executives leaned forward. "But, Amara, what if this costs us everything? What if freezing the money backfires?" Amara met his worried eyes. "Then let it cost me. But I will not let it cost my dignity. A company without dignity is already bankrupt." Her voice was steady, but her heart beat harder than she showed. She knew the risk. Every move she made now was fire on dry grass. One wrong step and the flames could consume her. But she had learned long ago that people only listened when they felt the heat. That night, she worked until dawn. She called investors, explained her decision in words sharper than any press statement. Some listened. Some walked away. But Amara did not flinch. When the sun rose, the airport video was everywhere. News anchors argued on live television. Some called her a hero, standing against disrespect. Others called her dangerous, saying no single person should wield such financial force. On social media, hashtags with her name burned across the world. And then, as she expected, the call came. The airport director himself requested a private meeting. His tone was nervous, almost pleading. "Miss Lewis, the situation has gotten out of hand. Our staff member crossed a line. We are prepared to issue a formal apology, but we ask you to lift the freeze. Too many companies are being hurt." Amara allowed herself a small smile. She had struck the right nerve. "The system was shaking. I will meet you," she said softly. "But not on your terms." "On mine." The director paused, confused. "And those are?" Amara's eyes hardened. "You will gather every senior manager, every officer in that terminal. And you will watch me walk through security again. This time without insult. This time with respect. The room around her fell silent. Even her executives looked at her in disbelief. It was not just about money anymore. Amara wanted something far greater: public recognition, that she would not be mocked. Not even once, when she ended the call, her CFO whispered, "Amara, this is war." She turned toward the window, the morning light glowing against the glass. "No," she said quietly. "This is justice." The morning air was heavy with whispers. At the airport, tension buzzed through every corridor. Travelers scrolled through their phones, watching the viral video of the woman who froze nearly $1 billion with a single call. Staff members walked with nervous steps, unsure if today would bring more humiliation for them or for their bosses. Inside the executive office, the airport director paced back and forth, sweat gathering on his forehead. Around him, senior managers argued in low voices. Some said the CEO was bluffing, that she wouldn't dare destroy her own company just to prove a point. Others had already seen the reports of frozen accounts and stalled deals. They knew the truth. She had dared, and she had won. "She's arriving soon," one manager said nervously. "She demanded we gather everyone. Security, managers, staff. If we don't comply, if we don't," the director snapped, "she'll keep that freeze. And if she keeps it, the airlines will tear this place apart. Do you want to be the one explaining to the world why hundreds of flights are grounded because we couldn't control one officer's mouth?" The room fell silent. Meanwhile, Amara's car pulled up to the front of the terminal. The glass doors slid open, and the crowd inside turned their heads at once. Cameras lifted, reporters shoved forward, microphones stretched out, but Amara walked with steady steps. She wore the same calm expression she had the night before. Her hair tied back, her dress neat, her eyes sharp as blades. The officers at the entrance stood straighter, as if the weight of her presence commanded respect more than any law could. Behind her walked two assistants, holding files and tablets. But it was clear she didn't need them to speak for her. When she reached the checkpoint, the atmosphere thickened. Dozens of airport staff stood in rows, their uniforms pressed, their faces tense. Behind them, senior managers waited, their forced smiles unable to hide their unease. The director stepped forward, wringing his hands. "Miss Lewis," he began, his voice carrying through the silent terminal. "On behalf of the airport authority, I would like to..." Amara raised her hand. The director froze mid-sentence. She did not look at him. Her eyes scanned the room, searching, until they found the woman who had mocked her the day before. The officer stood at the far end of the line, pale, her hands trembling. Amara walked toward her slowly, each step echoing in the silence. The crowd held its breath. The camera zoomed closer. When she stopped in front of the officer, the woman could barely meet her gaze. Amara's voice was calm, low, but strong enough for everyone to hear. "You asked me what I was without my company," she said. "You laughed at my accent. You mocked my identity. Do you see now what I am?" The officer swallowed hard, her lips parting, but no sound came out. Amara continued, her words sharp and steady. "I am not asking for your respect. I am demanding it. Not only for me, but for every person who has been told they were less because of how they speak, where they come from, or the color of their skin. Your insult was not against me alone. It was against millions. Today, you will learn what that insult costs." She turned her head slightly, raising her phone. "Lift the freeze," she said. Her CFO's voice cracked on the other end. "Are you sure, Amara?" "Yes," she replied. "Let the money move. But let the world remember what stopped it." The command spread instantly through financial networks. Accounts unlocked, deals resumed, but the memory of the freeze remained. It was no longer just about dollars, it was about power. Gasps and whispers filled the terminal. Reporters scribbled furiously, capturing every word. Some passengers clapped softly, others stared in awe. The officer who had mocked her stood frozen, unable to look up. The director stepped forward again, his voice shaking. "Miss Lewis, on behalf of this entire institution, I extend our deepest apology. The officer will be disciplined. Training will be reformed. Please accept our respect." Amara gave a single nod. She had not come for apologies. She had come to leave a mark. As she walked away, the cameras followed and the internet exploded again. News channels broadcast her speech on repeat. Headlines blazed across the world. "One insult, $950 million frozen," they read. The CEO who brought an airport to its knees. In the back of her car, Amara finally exhaled. The battle was not over. Winning respect in one terminal was only the beginning. The greater war lay ahead in boardrooms, in politics, in every corner where power tried to silence voices like hers. But as the city skyline came into view once more, Amara allowed herself a small, tired smile. She had shown the world what one woman could do when pushed too far, and she knew the world would never forget. Asterisk. The morning after the airport confrontation, the world was still buzzing. News anchors replayed the footage again and again. Amara standing tall, her phone lifted, her voice calm yet unshakable. Social media was divided. Some praised her as a hero. Others accused her of being reckless. But no matter the opinion, everyone was talking about her. In her office tower downtown, Amara sat at the head of the long glass table. Around her, her executives spoke in rushed tones, their eyes darting to her face for clues. "Our shares dropped 5% this morning," the CFO said. "Investors are nervous. They think you're unpredictable." But at the same time, he hesitated, sliding a tablet across the table. "Our brand name is everywhere. Search traffic is up 600%. Sales inquiries are pouring in. People are calling you a symbol of resistance." Amara scanned the screen, her expression unreadable. Headlines flashed across it. "CEO destroys airport with $950 million move. Accent mocked. Fortune frozen. Is Amara Lewis the world's strongest businesswoman?" "Symbols don't pay bills," one executive muttered nervously. "We need stability. What if partners pull out?" Amara leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "And what if they don't? What if they realize I've just shown them how much power we hold? I don't want partners who fear a storm. I want partners who learn how to ride it." The room grew quiet. Amara's voice had a weight that silenced doubt. Suddenly, her assistant rushed in. "Ma'am, you need to see this." She switched on the large screen at the end of the room. A live broadcast filled it. The airport officer who had mocked her was on television, her face pale, her voice trembling. She read a prepared statement, apologizing publicly. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't the apology, it was the way the entire airport board stood behind her. Their heads lowered in shame. The CFO whispered, "They're bowing. They're admitting fault." "That never happens." Amara's eyes narrowed. She understood the game. The apology wasn't just about her. It was about survival. The airport authority feared collapse. Airlines were threatening lawsuits, governments were calling for explanations, and shareholders were demanding answers. Amara had forced them into a corner, and now they had no choice but to bend. But as she studied the screen, a new call came through. It wasn't from her staff. It was from a government minister. The voice on the line was polite, almost too polite. "Miss Lewis, your actions have unsettled the markets. There are concerns your company holds too much influence. Freezing nearly $1 billion overnight, it makes people nervous. Some leaders are calling for restrictions. They want to limit what CEOs like you can do." The executives around her stiffened. Government involvement was a new battlefield. Amara's answer was steady. "Tell them this. If my power makes them nervous, maybe they should ask why they mocked me in the first place. Respect is not optional. If they want peace, they'll treat me as an equal. If not, Then let them see what happens when equality is denied. The minister hesitated, clearly not expecting such a sharp response. The call ended quickly, but the message was clear. The fight was no longer about one airport. It was about the entire system. That evening, Amara stood in her private office, looking out at the city lights. The world below her was restless. News vans parked outside. Protesters gathered, some carrying signs praising her courage, others demanding regulations against her. Her assistant entered quietly. "You've started something bigger than you imagined. People are calling this the accent war. They say it's about dignity, about respect, about the value of one's voice." Amara turned, her golden earrings catching the light. "It's not a war one wanted, but it's one I will finish." She walked back to her desk and opened a file. Inside were details of a new project, an expansion into international markets. Her company had been planning it for years, but now the timing was perfect. She would use the storm to her advantage. If governments wanted to test her power, she would show them it stretched far beyond money. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was from one of the world's biggest airlines. Their CEO spoke quickly. "Amara, we've watched what happened. We want to work with you directly. If you can stabilize this chaos, we'll sign a contract worth billions. We believe in your leadership." Amara smiled faintly. An insult had turned into an opportunity. What others saw as danger, she saw as leverage. As the night grew darker, she knew the days ahead would test her more than ever. Allahs would come. Enemies would rise. But she had already won one truth. Her voice, her accent, her identity, they were not weaknesses. They were her power. And the world had only just begun to understand it. The storm had grown beyond the airport. What began as a single insult had become a global debate. News anchors called it the accent war, while business papers spoke of the $950 million freeze. Everyone had an opinion. But one truth was clear: Amara Lewis had become the center of it all. In the halls of power, her name was whispered with both respect and fear. Politicians debated how much influence one CEO should have. Rival companies saw an opportunity to paint her as reckless. But at the same time, ordinary people around the world flooded social media, calling her an icon of dignity. Amara sat in her office late into the night, her eyes scanning reports from every corner of the globe. Her assistants moved quietly around her, handing her updates. Contracts were shifting. Banks were nervous. Investors were divided. Some pulled out, but many more lined up, drawn to her strength. Her CFO entered with tired eyes. "Amara, 3 governments are calling for hearings. They say you used your company's power like a weapon. And 2 rival CEOs are already on television saying you're dangerous." Amara closed the folder in front of her. "Of course they are. Power always threatens those who think they own it." The CFO hesitated. "And what if they succeed in turning the world against you?" Amara stood, walking toward the tall windows that overlooked the city. The streets below were alive with protesters, some holding banners of her face with the words "Respect Power," others demanding she be stopped. "Then I will face them," she said softly. "But I will not kneel." The next morning, Amara boarded a flight to Geneva. The Global Business Council had called an emergency session, and she had been summoned. Journalists swarmed the airport, their cameras flashing as she walked through with her usual calm steps. This time, no one dared mock her accent. The staff stood straighter, eyes wide, as if they were standing before a queen. The council chamber was filled with the most powerful men and women in the world. Billionaire CEOs, finance ministers, heads of international banks, they all sat around the circular hall, their voices sharp with argument. When Amara entered, the noise faded. All eyes turned to her. Some were cold. Some were curious. A few, quietly, were respectful. The chairperson cleared his throat. "Miss Lewis, you've shaken markets with your actions. You froze nearly $1 billion overnight, risking global trade. What do you have to say for yourself? Amara's gaze swept across the room. She saw faces lined with suspicion, with fear, with doubt. She also saw something else: envy. These were people who had mocked others in private, who had built empires on arrogance, yet none of them had dared to do what she had done. She spoke clearly, her accent rich and proud. I did not freeze that money to destroy. I froze it to show that disrespect has a price. If you mock the powerless, the world stays silent. But if you mock me, the world stops moving. That is not a threat. That is a truth you chose to learn the hard way. Her words echoed through the chamber. Some members shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward, intrigued. A rival CEO stood, his voice sharp. This is exactly why you're dangerous. One woman should not hold the power to collapse economies. You've turned your company into a weapon. We cannot allow it. Amara turned to him, her eyes steady. You speak of weapons? You've silenced voices for decades. You've stolen land, crushed workers, destroyed lives in the name of profit. And now you fear me because I remind you that respect is stronger than fear. You're not afraid of my power, you're afraid of losing yours. Gasps rippled across the room. Cameras captured every word, broadcasting it to millions watching live. The rival CEO's face flushed, but he had no reply. The chairperson tapped his gavel, trying to restore order. Miss Lewis, this council must decide whether your influence is acceptable. If you wish to keep your place here, you must prove that your leadership is not a danger to global stability. Amara stood taller, her voice unwavering. If stability means silence in the face of insult, then I reject it. If dignity is called danger, then I embrace it. I am not here to be acceptable. I am here to be undeniable. The chamber erupted with noise. Some applauded, others shouted, but no one ignored her. She had done what few ever manage. She had turned a room full of the world's most powerful into an audience. That night, headlines burned across the globe again. The black CEO faces the world and doesn't kneel. One insult. 1 billion, one woman against the council. Amara returned to her hotel suite, exhausted but unbroken. She stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. She knew the fight was far from over. Rivals would come harder now. Governments would press tighter. But she also knew one thing: her voice had become more than hers alone. It was the voice of millions who had been silenced. And now, the world was forced to hear it. The night after the council meeting was long. Amara sat alone in her hotel suite, the city lights glowing beneath her window. Her assistants had finally gone to rest. Her phone had stopped buzzing for the first time in days, and silence filled the room. But her mind was not quiet. She replayed every moment, the mocking words at the airport, the freeze of $950 million, the shocked faces of managers, the nervous voices of government ministers, the burning spotlight of the council chamber. What had begun as humiliation had become a storm, and she stood at the center of it. But storms do not last forever. Now came the question, what would remain after it? By morning, the answer began to appear. Her CFO rushed in with breaking news. Amara, it's happening. The markets are stabilizing. Investors who left are returning. And look at this. He handed her a tablet glowing with headlines. Amara Lewis sets new standard in global business. From mockery to power. How one CEO redefined respect. Accent that shook the world. Even her rivals could not escape the shift. Some tried to attack her in interviews, but their words were drowned out by waves of support from ordinary people. Millions posted videos online, sharing their own stories of being mocked for their voices, their names, their identities. They used her image as a banner, her words as their rallying cry. One airline CEO called her directly. We want to partner with you. Your influence is undeniable, and we would rather stand with you than against you. Then came another call, this one from a prime minister. "Miss Lewis, the world is changing. You've shown us that respect is not weakness. We would like to invite you to advise on international trade policy. You've proven you understand power better than anyone." Amara listened, her expression calm, but her heart steady with something deeper than pride. She had not fought this battle for titles, for money, or for contracts. She had fought it so the next person with an accent like hers would not be laughed at in an airport. Later that afternoon, she returned to her company headquarters. The lobby was full of staff waiting for her. Some had worried she had gone too far. Others had silently admired her. But now, as she walked through the glass doors, the sound that greeted her was not silence, it was applause. Her employees stood tall, clapping, their faces bright with something rare in the world of business. Admiration that came not from profit, but from courage. Amara raised a hand and the room fell silent. She stood in the center, her voice clear. "2 weeks ago, I was mocked for my accent. Yesterday, I stood before the most powerful in the world. And today, I stand before you. Let this company never forget, our worth is not measured by how others see us, but by how we refuse to bow when they try to shame us. Respect is not a request. It is a right. And from this day on, it will be our foundation." The room erupted again, not just in applause but in conviction. They believed her because she had lived it. That evening, Amara received a final call. It was from the very airport where it all began. The director's voice was quiet, humbled. "Miss Lewis, we would like you to return. Not for inspection, not for apology, but to rename our new international wing. We want it to bear your name. The Amara Lewis Terminal." For the first time in days, Amara allowed herself to laugh softly. Not from pride, not from revenge, but from the strange poetry of life. An insult had given birth to a legacy. She agreed, but with one condition. "If my name stands there, it must stand beside a message." A simple one. 3 words, "Respect costs nothing." The director agreed without hesitation. Weeks later, travelers walked through the gleaming new terminal. Above their heads, in bold letters, was her name, and beneath it, the words that carried the weight of her journey. Children read them. Businessmen read them. Leaders read them. And none could ignore the truth. Amara stood quietly the day it was unveiled, watching strangers pass beneath the sign. Some recognized her, some did not. It did not matter. What mattered was that the lesson would live longer than the moment. She turned to her CFO and smiled. "We didn't lose $950 million, she said. "We invested it in something greater than money," and with that, Amara Lewis walked forward into her future, no longer just a CEO, but a symbol that dignity, once defended, could never be mocked again.